Thank you everybody for taking a few minutes to check out this video. I am here with a friend, mentor, spiritual father, all kinds of things, I think. Dan Grotter. Dan, how are you doing?
Great to be with you guys. Love you guys at the Grove and love you, Josh. Great to be with you.
Yeah, so I asked Dan just to take a few minutes to talk about our network that the Grove is a part of, the Ignite Network. And so we are giving a portion of our Christmas offering this year to the network just to be a little extra blessing. We support them monthly as it is with just your normal giving and offerings, but we just thought this would be a great time to give a little extra blessing. It's been a hard year on all ministries and organizations, so this is a great opportunity for us to just to give. So if you're not familiar, you probably are, but in case you're not, the Grove is a part of the Missionary Church. And within the Missionary Church, there is the U.S. ministries portion of that is called Generate. Within Generate, there are all kinds of networks. And so we are a part of the Ignite Network. And so Dan, tell us just a little bit. You started Ignite 10, 11 years ago, I guess it was. What was your vision for Ignite that kind of makes it different than what makes this unique, I guess?
Well, within the Missionary Church, there's 40 different networks. And so we have begun for years using discipleship multiplication to see churches really kind of explode and develop and really reach large areas and communities. And so we began to do this network, and I had a heart for my area back in the mountains here in Appalachia and the Smoky Mountains. I'm from this basic area, and we lived on both coasts. And so we really came back to start a network here. And so Josh was one of the very first guys that we even started this network with. So Josh is one of those guys that's been at the founding point. And so I had my first conversation with him like in day 2 or 3 of launching this network. And so I began to talk to him about this process. And so he was green in that process as a church planner, and I was green in starting a network. I'd never quite done this, although we'd launched networks on both coasts. But they were out of a single church. And so I began to say, well, eventually my time clock's going to run out. So I need to start working through other leaders instead of just launching them myself. And so Josh was one of the first leaders I began to work with. As we began to do this, we began to see the Father do amazing things. And so what started out of a small network here in Knoxville, actually, we've launched just in our network alone, all across North America in 18 states, 100 plus hubs. And within each hub, some of them may have as many as 40 to 60 micro churches and church plant expressions there. And so that's happened really just in a very short period of time with not much more than just $100,000 worth of startup money. Now we have more in training, but it hasn't required a ton of resources. So your money goes so far in helping these churches starting hubs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. It's hard to believe it's been 10, 11 years. I mean, it's just, and to see what the Father has done, and really in the grand scheme of everything, what's such a short period of time. I mean, to see the churches, the micro churches, the multiplication that's happened, it's been neat to just kind of be a part of and watch it happen. So the Grove came in underneath this network about 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago now, I guess, right before I started with the Grove. And so one of the blessings that we get is just being able to have a network of other churches that share like-minded values, and we can collaborate together, and we get coaching together through Dan and other avenues. And it's just there's so many resources that are available. But what do you feel are some of the things that our network is doing really well right now that as people give toward this offering, that they can know, hey, this money is going toward these few things that are really making kingdom impact?
Great question, Josh. You know, what we've found is that the generations of people 40 and under are significantly different than people 40 and up. And so our fastball is really hitting young leaders. I call them young. I consider like people in their 30s and 20s young. The 40 and under crowd is really where we're getting our best traction. When you look at most churches, they're really specializing in the 40 and up crowd, more in the 60 and 70 year crowd. In fact, there's a lot of churches in this area, people who are 60 and 70, they're called the youth group, because the really old people are 80. And so, they're working with the young people who are 50 and 60. That's not all the case. We're working primarily with millennials and Gen Z church planters. Josh is now one of the older, more mature leaders in our network. He's kind of the old man. And so that's really our fastball. We're working with leaders that no one else is really working with, and we're training them. And in fact, denominations all around the country are asking us to come in, and they're saying, where are all the millennial and Gen Z leaders? How do you work with them? And what some of them have had me come in to teach, and how do you reach millennials? And I've been saying that with millennials, it's almost too late. We have to start working with Gen Z. Not that it's too late, but millennials aren't kids. They're adults. They're leading our country. We've got to start working with the Gen Zs, and then the next ensuing generation behind that. So that's kind of where we've been working with. That's where we've been getting our greatest traction. So we're planning with planners who are 24, 23, 22, and people are going, oh, those are kids. They don't have any business planning a church. Well, we're shifting and we're doing things different. We're not just putting them on the side and saying, well, when you grow up, son, we're training and raising them up and helping them become serious church planners, launching movements. So much of our leadership is young. Ironically, too, we began with the Grove in the earliest days of the Grove, working with Scott and the leaders, and we began to coach them and train them. But you're right, Josh. Only in the last few years has the Grove stepped up, because the Grove was they were benefiting from the network, but you guys have really become a major contributor and a partner, and you really have stepped in the maturity years of the Grove to really be a contributor in a way that has just been so appreciated. But I just want to say thank you so much to you, Grove, for all that you guys have done and the sacrifices you've made so that this would move forward. And so you guys are giving beyond yourselves. Just within the network, you're giving all across North America. We're up in Canada. We're seeing really exciting things happening up in Ontario and Ottawa and Cobourg in that area, and Toronto. So that's exciting, as well as all across North America. But those secular areas that are so hard to reach, that are so unchurched, we're seeing some really exciting things happening there. So you guys are reaching beyond that just within one network, but then you're also giving to the other 40 networks, plus you're also laying the foundation for the international missions. And that's an amazing story too. The missionary church began with, I love this story, with just 250 churches. When those small group of churches, what happens is the first 25 years, they planted 10% of themselves, and they said, that's not acceptable. It still put them in the #1 category of church planting networks. And then what they did is they shifted. They said, we're going to really put all of our resources into church planting. And in the next 25 years, because they're only a 50-year-old movement, they planted 1,000% themselves. This small group of churches, of 250 churches, planted 27,000 churches around the world. And so I've never seen a group that has that kind of reach and impact on such small amounts of resources. So when you give, you know that not 99 point, I don't know what percentage of it goes straight to the mission field. Almost none of it's taken out administratively. And I came from a Baptist, I shouldn't say Baptist, I'm sorry. I came from a denomination that being spoken of. And that group, about 70% of their cost goes to administration. About 30% goes to the mission field. And so it's just like, that's really sad in some ways that so little of it actually goes to the missionaries and goes to the mission field. And I love the fact that it's just almost every dollar goes straight. I mean, there's a few cents that go for administration to support, but outside of a few cents, like almost every $99 out of 100 go straight to the mission field.
Yeah, that's such a breath of fresh air. It's and I think that's something that people my generation and even the generations younger, we tend to question a lot of stuff and not just want to walk into anything blind. And so especially that comes with, well, where's the money going? And that's a big thing. That's one thing I've loved about the missionary church is just that their heart is so much for, let's simplify, let's keep our overhead structure as reduced as possible so that we can really stay focused on what matters most. And I think we're seeing the results and the benefits of that. And as you talked about, we're seeing great things happen and really all over the country and even in other countries. But could you just maybe share a story or two, just a real quick example of something maybe outside of the Knoxville, Tennessee bubble, that just a way that you're seeing either a church planner rise up or you're seeing God do something unique through a leader?
Well, the challenge is it's hard to even narrow it down to one story. Yeah. But there's a guy up in Canada who his story was just remarkable. he began to just really wrestle with, he was a guy who was in the church, and he was really wrestling with this stuff. And we met him at Exponential. We do get a chance to do conferences all around the country. They asked us to come in and speak, and we're guest lecturers and teachers and trainers. And I met him in Orlando at this Exponential conference, which is the largest church planting conference in the world, actually. And so I was really intrigued by how he was a good leader, but he was really stuck in this process of, how do I do this? And how does all this work? Well, just in about 2 years' time, he was on a training last night with us. He's going to be one of our coaches, one of our trainers. He's gone from just, how do I wrestle with this, in just 1 year's time in Coburg, to starting and launching Multiplying Communities. And he had other leaders on there with him. And it just was exciting to see how much he had changed and how much that had happened. And this is in the secular area of Canada. It's just really, we're seeing there are virtually no churches where he's at. I mean, just no churches. I mean, people are without the gospel. And he's starting these church planting multiplication cultures, and they're doing with almost no money. But it's just, so that's just one quick one that just pops into my mind. And then I can just go on and on. There's a guy down in South Carolina, down in Charleston, and his church culture just exploded down there. And he's starting to multiply and see brand new movements starting to pop up all around the North Charleston area. So while we're fairly strong in the Southeast, we're also seeing some exciting things happening. And one of the guys that actually Josh brought in, Josh Carter, out in Portland, who's one of your dear friends. Actually, he was your youth pastor. We're just saying some exciting things happening out there in Portland, which is, they're burning that city, in the BLM riots. And so, but in the middle of all this conflict and chaos, that we're seeing the Father do amazing things, even where there's so much difficulty and challenge, because, the light shines brightest in the darkness, right? John 1 tells us that. And so some of our movements are happening best where it's really the hardest, actually.
Yeah. Well, that's just a praise to be able to step back and see God moving. And even in those hard areas, it would be easy for us to assume like COVID has stopped the movement of God, but he said he'll build his church. If the gates of hell aren't going to prevail against it, and then COVID or nothing else is going to slow it down either. So I'm just so thankful to be a part of the network. Thank you for your leadership, Dan. And I know we all greatly appreciate you. And so church family, as you hear this, hopefully this gives you a little better insight into the family. We don't like to call it is a denomination, but we don't think of it as a denomination. It's really a family of churches is what we call it. And it's just different. It's hard to explain it from a leadership perspective, but it really is. It's just a different experience. And so, but anyway, hopefully this gave you a little snapshot into the missionary church and specifically the Ignite network that we're a part of and how God is moving. So Dan, thank you again just for taking a few minutes to be with us.
Great to be with you guys. Love you guys here at the Grove. Thanks so much. Appreciate you so much.
All right. Thank you, everybody.